Good morning and welcome to the COVID-19 Care Conversation. Happy Aloha Friday. I'm Yenji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. We're so happy to bring you this conversation brought to you by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health. Today, Ryan, we have a very special guest to talk to us about changes in the travel industry, really the lifeblood of our economy, and some exciting things to share with us about changes that have been made. That, of course, is Hawaiian Airlines CEO Peter Ingram.
That's right. Excited to talk to him about some of the changes that Hawaiian Airlines is making to accommodate all these restrictions, of course, that we are seeing that are being required now with social distancing. And so we're going to get an update from him about those efforts, as well as, just sort of the overall plans for Hawaiian Airlines moving forward. Of course, we always like to start off the day by giving you an update on some of the new counts. And again, we saw just 2 new cases reported yesterday on Thursday for a total of 655 positive cases since the outbreak began.
Yeah, and the recovery rate really is remarkable. More than 95 of those who've been infected in the state of Hawaii have now recovered from the virus. We have very low infection rates right now, very low community spread. And so that's great news. And that means tonight, restaurants open for dine-in service here on Oahu. I know a lot of business owners are really itching to reopen, but it's going to look a little bit different when you go to eat out. It's also going to look very different when you start to travel. June 16th is the day that inter-island travel begins again, welcoming people from the neighbor islands back to Oahu and letting folks who live here go see family if they have that on the neighbor islands. Joining us to talk about a lot of the changes now is Hawaiian Airlines CEO Peter Ingram. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Tell us a little bit about how you're gearing up for the change.
Well, I think we're ready to go at this point. One of the things that we've been focused on, we've actually been operating through this period, of course, to carrying essential personnel. So load factors have been very light, but we've been operating 5 flights to each of Maui, Kona, Hilo, and Lihue from Honolulu, and we've been flying a couple of flights, 3 flights right now to the mainland, carrying mainly cargo. So we've been operating, but what we've been doing is assessing our procedures in light of the new environment we're in. We rolled out a number of things this week that is a product of that, with more spacing in the airports. We've got plexiglass on the counters. All of our employees will be wearing face coverings. We're requiring passengers to wear face coverings. And we've really taken a look at all of our cleaning procedures. And the good news for people who are getting ready to travel is air travel's actually been a very safe environment all along. There's not a lot of indication that people have contracted the disease from being on airplanes. And part of that's because we already have a lot of circulation of outside air into the airplane, so it's replaced on a regular basis. There's HEPA filters like you would have in a hospital environment as part of what's on our airplanes. But we've introduced some new measures like this electrostatic fogging, which is the picture you just had up a moment ago. And what that is the disinfectant is slightly electronically charged, and it helps it adhere to surfaces better and provides lasting cleaning. And that's going to be part of our regular cleaning procedures going forward. So we've taken a look at everything. We think we're ready to go, and we're excited to be able to welcome people back to traveling without having to worry about a quarantine when they get to the other end of the route.
What is sort of the impact? Obviously, this has, been a hard run for the airlines industry. How significant has this been for Hawaiian Airlines overall as a company? What are some of the things that you folks have had to implement because of this reduced travel and so much restrictions?
Well, economically, this has been as devastating as anything that most of us have seen in our lifetimes. And I've been in the airline industry for 25 years now. And certainly this is, in terms of the economic impact, is beyond 9/11. It's beyond the global financial crisis. We've gotten an industry where we can't inventory our product. If the seats we were going to be able to produce and sell today aren't sold today, we can't put them on a shelf and sell them tomorrow. They're gone. And, well over 90% of our revenue has disappeared, starting in March with some of the impacts. And then, April and May are completely zero financially. So we've been, at Hawaiian Airlines, we've been burning through right now about $3 million a day in just ongoing cash losses. That's obviously a staggering number. It's actually down from about $4.5 million a day before. So we have been able to manage our spending down some, but it is economically it's unsustainable for us, and I think that actually parallels the fact that this is economically unstable for the state of Hawaii. So much of our economy relies on tourism to bring in dollars and to help employ people, whether it's in hotels or restaurants and small businesses. And so it's an incredibly difficult period. We all see it in the unemployment stats, and hopefully we can get to the other side of this soon and start building back and getting people employed and getting small businesses and our business back up and running.
$3 to $4.5 million a day is clearly unsustainable. We talked to Mufi Hanneman yesterday about the hotel piece of this, and he was saying that if it's not up and running by July, he really worries that some hotels will have to close down. How long can you sustain losses like that?
It is. I certainly agree. We can't keep going like this forever. We have been in our business that we did have access to some government assistance, and that has helped bridge us. And we also we came into this in a strong financial position. So we had a cash balance at the beginning of the year that was about $700 million, which is more than we normally target to have. It was fortunate that we had that. We've borrowed more money. But we do have to get going, because that's borrowed money, and we've got to pay that borrowed money back. And if we can't get up and running relatively soon, one of the things I worry about is we're going to have to shrink the airline. And if we shrink the airline, that means we're going to have fewer opportunities to employ people, and we're going to have to make some very, very difficult decisions. And the longer we are effectively out of business, the harder it gets to recover. And so I'm eager to get going as well. I think, July or at the latest, the beginning of August, to get things up and running is really important for a lot of businesses in the community, and that certainly includes us.
We want to bring in some of the questions from those who are tuning in. Cheryl's asking about Las Vegas is opening, so will you be starting that service there soon? What about restarting services to JFK and Boston? I know a lot will depend on what happens here in the islands with the quarantine and what the governor decides, but what is sort of the plan for restarting some of these routes that were very successful for you folks?
So with Las Vegas in particular, we've had this question since Vegas began opening up this week. Unfortunately, we're just really not going to see much demand when people realize that they have to come back and have a 14-day quarantine on this end when they return from their trip. And certainly inbound visitors from Las Vegas are not going to come in numbers with the quarantine in place. So we don't have any plans to restart Las Vegas or Boston or New York until we get to a point where the quarantine can be removed and we can bring in a volume of visitors and guests on our airplanes that justifies having the service in place.
Ingrid Peterson is asking, does Hawaiian fly to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, which would probably be the safest trans-Pacific routes to open first? We've heard a lot of talk recently about these travel bubbles. Love to get your thoughts on that. Could that be the market that Hawaiian shifts to and looks to bring in some more revenue?
Well, we did fly to Japan in March. We were actually second only to Japan Airlines in terms of the volume of seats between Japan and Hawaii. And we have served Australia and New Zealand. Obviously, right now we're not serving any of those international locations. The only place we are flying to is Seoul, Korea, 3 times a week, and we aren't carrying any passengers on those flights. We're only carrying cargo. So that's a cargo opportunity that we have carved out amidst this period. The travel bubble concept is something we're open to discussing, but we really don't think it's the solution that's going to get us all the way there for a couple of reasons. One is, first of all, for New Zealand and Australia, those markets are very small. The total volume of visitors really only supports a couple of flights a day from each of those countries, from all the carriers combined, not just Hawaiian. We were flying 3 times a week to Auckland before. About half the people on our airplanes were actually connecting to North America. And of course, the economic damage in Australia and New Zealand has been severe as well. So we would expect those to be limited opportunities. Not to say we're not going to go back, but I don't think that is going to allow any hotels to reopen or other businesses to start up. Japan is a little bit different. It represents about 15% of the visitors that traveled to Hawaii before the crisis. And so there may be some limited opportunity in Japan, but again, there will be a lot of hotels, I think, that still won't open based on that small subset of the market. The other challenge with the bubbles is that people globally talking about travel bubbles are really typically talking about one sovereign nation negotiating with another sovereign nation on the terms for that. And of course, Hawaii is a state. We're part of the United States. And so there's a lot of complexities to dealing with the federal government regulation. And our industry is really governed federally more so than we are by the state or by local governments. So I worry that people putting a lot of faith in travel bubbles as the solution is going to distract us from what I think we really need to do, which is thinking about what are the protocols and conditions and procedures that we need to have in place so that we can ensure that it's safe for people to travel, and so that we can ensure that our community is going to be protected. And there will be some risk, of course. There's one of the, even if we think airplanes are safe for people to travel in, and we absolutely do, it is the fact that we carry people between different places. And so if we're bringing someone from a place where there is more of the disease in the environment and they're coming here, they're bringing that virus with them. And part of the solution to that is actually not in our control. It's really more the Department of Health and the hospital system. Is due to the extent that we do have some small uptick in cases as we open up, are we able to deal with it in terms of hospital capacity, in terms of being able to care for people, in terms of having contact tracing in place? And one of the differences between where we are now and where we were in March is in March, this was hitting us like a tsunami, and we didn't know anything about this disease. We didn't have ideas about how to care for people and how to treat people who had it. The contact tracing resources weren't built up. One of the things I'm hopeful of is that in the healthcare community, we've made the use of the time since then to build our resources, get PPE for the hospital workers, make sure that we're in a position to manage some volume of cases if they come, better than we were at the beginning of this when we couldn't have been prepared. We didn't know what this disease was all about.
You know, one of the other questions we had is just about configurations and seating, because we do know that there's some social distancing that needs to happen. Of course, those sorts of elements will have to be implemented within the plane as well. So seating capacity might impact that arrangements as well. Can you speak to that, you know, especially on some maybe the neighbor island flights where the planes are a little smaller? How are you folks adjusting to the configurations and seating?
Sure, it's a great question, and one we've been thinking about, and airlines around the world have been thinking about. Airplanes are really not conducive to having 6 feet of distance between people. Even if you have an empty seat in between, seats are typically 18 inches wide, and 18 inches is a lot less than 6 feet. But what we have done is said, what can we do in that environment to provide more space? And what we've done on our airplanes is we've blocked our middle seats for the time being. We have limited the overall capacity. So even on the 717, that is a 2-3 configuration, 2 seats on one side, 3 on the other. We're making sure that the middle seats are empty, and overall we just won't sell beyond a 70% load factor. So there will always be 30% of the seats empty for the time being on those airplanes. Long term, that's not going to be sustainable for us or for other airlines unless we can charge an awful lot more than the market has typically borne for prices, because our fixed costs are still the same whether we sell 95% of the seats or 60 or 70% of the seats. But in the interest of getting things moving and giving people comfort with traveling again, that's what we've done, and some other airlines have done. I'd reiterate again, though, that even when we were flying full flights in March and other airlines were flying full flights, airplanes proved relatively safe. And because even if you're not 6 feet apart, you're also not face to face. You're sitting side by side. People are generally not expressing themselves in the way you might at a community gathering or a party or a concert. Often you just put your noise canceling headphones on and you chill out for a little bit and stay to yourself. And the air circulation certainly helps with that. So we're doing what we can on distancing, but we're also relying on some of those other sort of features that were already in place on the airplanes.
Lieutenant Governor Josh Green was on this program last week, and he said one of his concerns was that if we open up and then have to do another rapid shutdown like we saw in March, where we put on all these restrictions for a company like Hawaiian Airlines, and he cited your company specifically, he said that could put you out of business. What are your thoughts on that? Is that true?
Well, it's certainly something that would be very difficult for us to overcome, and I think a lot of businesses. And I mentioned earlier, we came into 2020 very strong financially. We've worked very hard over the last really 10 or 15 years that I've been at Hawaiian. We've worked very hard to strengthen our business and have a strong balance sheet. And the sad thing for us is that all that hard work to put the company in a strong financial position has been destroyed over about a 2-month period by something that was not caused by our employees. It was just an external natural phenomenon. So it's important for us to get back up and running again. If we started back up and had to go through that again, our ability to go out and borrow money as we did a couple of months ago, and to access the capital markets and to get government support, that may not be there again, and we may not have the financial resilience to be able to sustain as we have during this period.
One of the things, of course, that we're seeing many companies do during this time is just be able to support the community. And of course, Hawaiian Airlines, we saw has been a part of that in some of those efforts in getting masks to the neighbor islands and things like that. Can you speak to the things that you guys have done sort of in this time to help give back to the community? Because we know that there has been a lot of things that you guys have actually partnered in, despite all the challenges that you guys have faced. There's still a lot of things that you guys were doing.
Yeah, as dark as this period has been for all of us, one of the real beacons of inspiration for me and for our leadership team has been our employees. They're absolutely fantastic, and it's been incredible to see the things that they have done for each other and for their community. You mentioned bringing masks in. We flew a a flight to Shenzhen, China, on behalf of a local nonprofit group who organized the purchase of, I think it was 1.6 million face masks. Flying the airplane was actually the easy part. It took several weeks of preparation from people from a variety of different departments to work through the government approvals. We had never flown to Shenzhen before. We weren't operating to China before this. We had up till 2018, but some of our businesses' licenses had expired. All of that work had to be done. And so it was department after department needed to get involved to get that done, and then bring those masks back safely and get them to the nonprofit organization to be distributed throughout the islands. We've had our Team Kokua, which is our volunteer group of employees that organizes events on an ad hoc basis all the time. This is not something we've just put together now, but they've worked with the food bank and Meals on Wheels to deliver food to Kapuna, who obviously needed to shelter and stay safe, particularly early in this crisis. We've participated in some of the food giveaways for people, including our own employees who have taken voluntary leaves and are no longer working and needed access to food. So the people have done such a terrific job. And then within the company, people have had to do these incredible things, often stepping outside their normal day-to-day roles, because we just needed something done in a period of time, and people just stepped up and did it. And one of the examples was in March, when we were canceling flights at such a rapid pace. Our phone lines were becoming overwhelmed. We just didn't have enough reservations agents to answer those calls. And we put out a call for volunteers. Within a matter of days, we had set up a whole separate reservations desk, just ad hoc here in our offices, and people took calls and expedited that. And I could go on and on with the stories of heroism from our team. It's really been so heartwarming for me to see.
We saw a couple of questions in here. I know this is, we went from big picture to now this is, but people have some practical questions, just wanting to know about refunds. And I know you talked about those reservation agents that you had step up, all those volunteers. What is the policy as people start to decide that they do feel comfortable traveling, but they might be apprehensive because they worry about the return policy? Has that changed at all? And how can people feel confident when they book?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, on refunds, if we don't operate a flight, we cancel it, and we can't re-accommodate you on a different flight within a matter of hours, we will provide refunds. If people want to change, we will do that with flight credits for flights that are existing. And right now, we've got a change waiver out, so there are no change fees. If you buy a ticket today, and you decide 2 weeks from now you don't want to fly, or your circumstances have changed, you can change that with no change fee, have a flight credit to use on another flight. So we want people to be able to book with confidence.
Okay,
great. Well, Peter Ingram, thank you so much. We know that you are a busy man, and we just appreciate you taking the time to sort of give us an update and answering questions from some of the viewers that are tuning in. Any final thoughts that you have before we say goodbye to you?
Well, I just want to say thank you guys for getting information out to the community. I'm feeling better these days that we've done such a great job in our community of flattening the curve, that I think we do have the opportunity to begin restarting economic activity. And I know some of that has begun, and I look forward to us continuing to expand that in a way that really makes sure we're taking care of the needs and concerns of our community as we're doing it. So we're looking forward to getting started and getting back to closer to some regular business. It'll be a new normal, but we want to get back to some form of normal at least.
We are all hoping to get there. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday. Peter Ingram, CEO of Hawaiian Airlines.
Aloha.
Wow. Well, interesting, especially about, interesting, of course, we've seen some of those pictures that Ryan, you put up about, the cleaning protocols and how flights will be different, eliminating the middle row for now and operating basically at a max 70% capacity, but also about the harsh realities going from 4.5 now to $3 million losses every day. They're burning through that $700 million of reserves that he talked about. But you see that they are putting up a fight. They are trying their best to make sure that they stay in business and keep all of the people who are here in Hawaii employed, because this is such an important resource for us here in the islands. Also talking about how really that mainland piece has to come in, that the travel bubble doesn't sound like it's going to be enough.
Yeah, that was interesting to point, because I think a lot of people were talking about the travel bubble and putting a lot of stock into that. And while it will be good to get some of those visitors back, it was interesting to hear just the capacity and the numbers wise about what they'd see on that daily basis, and how even if they bring back those travel bubble segments, that it might not just be enough. Just a few flights a day, 15% is what he said from Japan, as well as the loads that were coming in from New Zealand and Australia. While it will be good to have a few flights, it's just not enough to sustain, of course, what we are used to seeing from West Coast travel and beyond in the mainland. So great to hear from him on that as well.
Yeah, and Hawaiian Airlines doing so much to lift up the community, flying in masks, and as he said, really trying to help wherever they can. Timothy Walker saying the only solution is to open Hawaii. Well, we're going to be asking Governor Ige about that on Monday. He'll be joining us once again. He's become a Monday regular, and we really appreciate his time. We definitely want to get an update now that we know that June 16th is neighbor island travel. The big question is, when can we welcome visitors from the mainland, and how do we do that successfully and safely? I know, Ryan, you and I were talking about this earlier. We saw those pictures now that Las Vegas casinos have opened. Not a lot of people look like they're wearing masks in those casinos, kind of a mix, and certainly not social distancing. So how do we do this safely? We're going to be asking the governor about that on Monday.
Yeah, we know a lot of people love going to Las Vegas and just waiting for the opportunity to get back there to Hawaii's 9th island. So it'd be interesting to see how Hawaii sort of regulates sort of the travel coming back from there. Of course, we've heard a bunch of different proposals from the lieutenant governor as well. So we know that is going to be a destination a lot of people are going to be looking forward to going back to. So how do we keep Hawaii safe with all those things that are happening, of course, as Vegas opens up as well? So we'll get an update on that. Also interested to talk to him about some of the other news that came out yesterday, in that, of course, we know that gyms and theaters were given the green light, but bars were also added to that list of reopening on June 19th. It was approved by Governor Ige, and of course initially proposed by Honolulu Mayor Kirk Caldwell to reopen some of those other establishments. There have been a large call for some of those bars and other indoor attractions, such as bowling alleys, arcades and mini golf, movie theaters, museums. All of those will be allowed to reopen on the 19th. There is still that question of how do you maintain social distancing in bars. The mayor saying that they may be looking for the Liquor Commission to sort of step in and help to regulate that, because he was saying that HPD is already just stretched so thin with trying to regulate everything else. They're not going to be able to be going into these bars to make sure that people are maintaining that, social distancing, and that the bars are adhering to those guidelines. So we'll see what happens there, and how they're able to sort of negotiate through this.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting to talk about. And we'd love to hear from you. What do you want to ask the governor? And do you feel comfortable? Today, of course, is when restaurants are opening. Are you going out for dinner tonight? It's been a while since we've all been out to eat. What does that look like? We'd love to hear from you. And if you do go out to dinner, tell us about it on Monday. The other thing that reopens today is the Honolulu Zoo. I know a lot of families are excited about that. It's going to look a little different. They're opening on a smaller scale, limited hours. They're expecting people to wear masks. Children 5 and under obviously don't need to wear a mask, but any kids older than that do need to be wearing a mask. So, but one little note here, that the ringtail baby lemurs were born April 18th. There they are. So you can go see them in person, and it'll be great for families to be able to enjoy what is such an activity that is enjoyed by so many. A few areas won't be open, but it looks like it's going to be a nice place for families to get out of the house and go see those baby lemurs.
That's right. And of course, we like to always end our segment by highlighting the Hawaii hero of the day. This time we have another hero that we want to highlight here on this Aloha Friday.
Yeah, Collaborative Support Services is facilitating funds for the Nest Hui. That's a group focused on 300 families with young children, helping them get through the COVID-19 crisis. So each of those 300 is provided with positive parenting tips, activity connected to support, and they are referred to different support for things like breastfeeding, postpartum distress, risk for child abuse or neglect, intimate partner violence, substance abuse, and other things. So, check them out. They're wonderful. Of course, the Collaborative Services and all of their partners put this together. They're a grantee of the Hawaii Community Foundation's Resilience Fund. We again say mahalo to Hawaii Community Foundation for all that they are doing for our community. So great to see the Nest Hui collaborate. A little switching technical difficulties. Want to let you know also that major food distribution at Aloha Stadium is happening next Tuesday. Head to hawaiifoodbank.org to get the full details. But that'll be, what we've seen in the past, where the vehicles can line up and then get a substantial amount of food to feed your family.
That's right. And again, next week, we are looking forward to catching up once again with Governor David Ige. We also have our Ask the Doctor that will be here as well as talking to UH Athletics Director Dave Matlin about some of the changes that are happening on the athletic standpoint and Hawaii athletics. So another week to look forward to. Again, we want to thank everybody for entering your questions here today and for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, we mahalo Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health. Thank you to all of you for all that you're doing to flatten the curve. Remember, as you head out this weekend and you enjoy life getting a little closer to what it once was, wear those masks, socially distance, wash your hands, do all the things so that we stay in this great position that we have been for so long now. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here with the Governor 10:30 on Monday.
Aloha.